The train car rattled, a familiar, hypnotic rhythm. I was leaning my head against the cool glass when he took the seat across from me. His name was Daniel. I didn't know it then, but his was a face I would never forget. It wasn't just that he was handsome. It was the way he looked at me. His eyes met mine across the aisle, and there was no flicker of shyness, no polite glance away. It was a steady, confident gaze, as if I was the one person in the crowded car he had been searching for. And it would have been a thrilling, harmless moment if James hadn't been sitting right beside me. James had his arm draped casually around my shoulders, his thumb rubbing a small, comforting circle on my arm. He was showing me a video on his phone, some silly clip of a dog stealing a pizza, and his laughter was a warm, familiar sound in my ear. He was my boyfriend of 3 years, the man who knew I took my coffee with oat milk and a half spoon of sugar, who always reminded me to bring an umbrella, who had a well-worn key to my apartment on his keychain. James was my safe harbor, my steady ground. But when Daniel sat down, the air in our small bubble shifted. It felt suddenly charged, warmer, and dangerously alive. At first, I brushed it off. A man looked at me. So what? But then, the next day, I saw him again. And again the day after that. Same train, same time. A silent ritual began. Sometimes he sat directly across from me, his presence an undeniable magnetic pull. Other times he'd be further down the car, but our eyes would always find each other over the tops of books and phone screens. I started noticing the little things, collecting them like secrets. The way he tapped his finger against his knee when he was restless. The small, faded scar on his chin that almost disappeared when a smile touched his lips. The worn copy of a book he always held but never seemed to read because his attention wasn't on the page. It was on me. And that's when the guilt began to curdle in my stomach. Because I wanted it. I craved that look. I found myself hoping James would have an early meeting, just so I could have those 27 minutes on the train alone. My heart would hammer against my ribs as I scanned the platform, a silent prayer on my lips that the man in the navy jacket would be there. One evening, it happened. The train jolted to a sudden, screeching halt between stations. The lights flickered and died, leaving us in the eerie glow of emergency lighting. A disembodied voice crackled over the intercom, announcing an indefinite delay. A collective groan went through the car. Daniel was sitting right across from me. And for the first time, he spoke. "Guess we're stuck," he said, his voice a low, calm murmur in the sudden quiet. I let out a nervous laugh, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Looks like it." We started talking, first about the delay, the weather, the general frustrations of city life. But soon the conversation deepened. He asked me about the scuffed-up travel guide peeking out of my bag. I told him about a trip to Lisbon I'd been dreaming of for years, a dream I hadn't spoken of out loud in a long time. He didn't just listen. He asked questions that made me feel seen, as if my quiet little dream was the most fascinating thing in the world. It felt easy. Too easy. When the main lights buzzed back on and the train lurched forward, Daniel leaned a little closer. Maybe if we're doomed to ride the same train every day, we shouldn't stay strangers. Before the logical part of my brain could scream a warning, I was handing him my phone. When he gave it back, his name was there. Daniel. That night, lying in bed next to a softly snoring James, I stared at his contact saved in my phone. It felt like a live wire in my hand. I knew, deep in my chest, that I had already crossed a line I couldn't uncross. James was stability. He was safety. He was Sunday mornings with pancakes and syrup that was always too sweet. He was arguing over which brand of yogurt to buy, and the comfortable silence of reading side by side on the couch. He was the warm, solid hand on the small of my back when I felt nervous. Daniel was something else entirely. He was fire. He was the exhilarating hum of a high-voltage wire, the breathtaking view from the edge of a cliff that whispered, "Jump." The night it all came undone was rainy and cold. James had cooked dinner, his grandmother's pasta recipe. The apartment smelled of garlic and basil, a scent that had always meant comfort. He was happy, telling me a long, rambling story from his workday as he poured me a glass of red wine. But I wasn't really there. My body was in that warm kitchen, but my mind was miles away, buzzing with a nervous energy that had nothing to do with him. Under the table, my phone vibrated silently. A message from Daniel. "Are you coming?" My chest tightened until it ached. We had made vague plans to meet at a bar near the station, plans I had told myself I would never follow through on. "I'm just going to get some air," I mumbled, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. James just nodded, mid-story. I stepped out onto our small balcony and into the downpour. The cold rain soaked my hair and clothes in seconds, but I barely felt it. My phone screen glowed in my hand. If I went to Daniel, I would be detonating my life. I could lose James, my home, my peace, everything. But if I stayed, I knew I might spend the rest of my life wondering what if. And right there, in 5 seconds that stretched into an eternity, I understood. Love isn't just about choosing between two people. It's about choosing who you become beside them. The next morning, James sat across from me at breakfast, barefoot, hair messy, scrolling the news on his phone. He looked up, catching my eye, and gave me that familiar, sleepy smile that always made me feel safe. And for the first time in weeks, I saw everything with a painful clarity. With him, I was steady. I was kind. I was the version of myself I could trust. Saying goodbye to Daniel was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. We met at a coffee shop, a neutral ground. He looked at me as I walked in, and I could tell he already knew. "I wanted to," I whispered, the words thick with tears I refused to let fall. God, I really wanted to. He gave me a small, sad smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I know," he said, and that was it. He stood up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Today, James's toothbrush still sits in the cup next to mine. We still have lazy Sunday mornings and cook pasta on rainy nights. But sometimes when I'm in the rush of the station, I'll see a man in a navy jacket from behind, and for one heart-stopping second, I forget to breathe. I remember the spark, the fire, the cliff's edge. Then I go home to James, and I remember the storm. The night I chose the shelter over the thrill. The night I chose not just him, but the version of myself I could live with. Did I make the right choice? Is a life of quiet, steady love worth more than a moment of breathtaking fire?